decided that I'd talk a little bit about what I call the art of the ask. I think one of the most important things that you develop, in addition to all of those other things that Jeff just talked about, is this ability to figure out how to ask the right questions in order to get the resources, the capital, whatever it is that you need in order to be successful. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that and then hopefully inspiring you to think about that a little bit differently than you might have before. So those pictures up there are of me, of my alter egos. So one of the companies that I started, we let you become Iron Man. So we could take your 3D face scan and we could literally let you become Iron Man. But what I learned about that is, as I was doing that, are all of the important questions that we had to answer in order to solve that and work with some of the largest brands in the world. And I believe this statement here, the important and difficult job is never to find the right answers, it's to find the right question. Because really, when you think about innovation and transformation and leadership, it's about our ability to ask the right questions in order to get the information that allows us to move down the path that we want to move down. So I think we should think about the art of the ask by actually thinking about transformation first. I get to spend all of my day job that I'm working on right now thinking about how businesses are transforming. So I often talk about the fact that for the last 10 years we've been doing digital transformation, and now we're moving into this intersection where the physical and the digital world meets. But what that it's allowed me to do is observe all sorts of leadership and things that are working when it comes to transformation, which are really about asking the right types of questions. So when I was at Disney, we happened to have been working on the Magic Band. How many of you have experienced the Magic Band in Florida? Okay, well, the rest of you should all want to go. So the question that was asked was not, how do you create some technology that people wear on their wrists and that transform what the park experience is? That's not what the question was. The question when you think and when you work at Disney, right, it is all about how do you help people make memories? How do you create an experience for them that is so powerful that not only do they want to come back, but that it truly impacts their life, right? And that's what the Disney company aspires to, right, is to create these types of experiences. And so when the Magic Band was created, it came out of a series of asking questions around what do we need to do to make it such that when people come to this theme park, the only thing they're worried about is making memories with their family. Now, Disney's entire culture is built around that. Right? The number one way to kill a project there is if you say that will create guest dissatisfaction. Right? We don't want to create guest dissatisfaction. We want to create seamless, frictionless experiences that integrate them into a story, that make it a magical experience for them. And what the outcome of that became is that if you find a way where when someone's in that experience, they no longer think about how they have to pay for things, how they have to send one of their children to run around and get all the fast passes and bring them back and then get to the next ride, how you get the park entrance passes, how you get to your hotel, how you do any of that. So it started them on this journey of creating what ultimately became the Magic Band, which is a completely transformative experience inside of the parks. So if you ever use them and you go there, all you do is put this on your wrist and it magically opens the door to everything in the parks. You don't have to get your wallet to pay. Your photos automatically go to that. It's your key to your room. It's the way that you check in, or it's your pass when you go in. And it's created all sorts of really fascinating things that we don't get to talk about today at the company. But it was about transformation. And the transformation came from a team of people willing to ask the right questions, get the capital, get the resources in order to make that. And when you do that, really fabulous things start to happen. And I've seen this across all of the organizations that I've worked at, including companies like Disney. So I'm really big into innovation. And I think the coolest part about innovation and transformation that we're undertaking in all companies today is what's becoming possible and the things that you might not think of. So one of my favorite innovations that's coming out as part of these questions are things like the refrigerator with the monitor and the camera in it. Okay, all of us need this, I'm just telling you, right? You need this when you can just open your app and you're at the grocery store, or you're, like I was yesterday in a meeting trying to order groceries to get delivered because I was never going to get to the store. You need the ability to just turn the camera on and see inside of your refrigerator and determine if you actually have milk or not, or if you're out of eggs, and then just place that order, and then have your refrigerator tell you the recipes that you can make based on what's in the refrigerator. So what if when that happens, I promise all of you will have that refrigerator in the next decade, right? Because it's available. And it changes the way that you think about the world. And it's because There's teams of people who are willing to ask the really hard questions around what becomes possible when we do this. Wonder if there are no constraints. Wonder if we just imagine what the world should be like. And this transformation that we're in the integration of the digital and physical world, it's leading the way on these questions. How many of you have ordered groceries online and have them delivered to your house? Okay, it wasn't even available 2 or 3 years ago, right? We all might have had Amazon delivered in 2 days. Yesterday, I needed milk. I was never going to break away from my meetings, and it was delivered to my house in 2 hours. Right? That changes, completely changes the way that you think about things, and it's changing every business. Every major retailer that I work with is asking really hard questions. When we integrate digital and physical worlds, what becomes possible in the ways people shop, the way we communicate with them, the way they engage in our brands. And those are the types of things that you are all going to be faced with and we are all faced with in our world. One of my other favorite questions that's been asked is, how do we get the lawn mowed without it being our children? Maybe it should be, but that's a different question for a different day. I really like the lawnmower bot that was shown at CES. I will tell you, it's not quite ready for us. It might take an entire week for that thing to mow our lawn. It is really slow. But it starts to challenge the assumptions of what we've thought about, right? And it starts to make the world very different. I also am a big fan of the laundry bot, which always shows up at CES, but it doesn't quite put it away yet, so I can't fully engage with that until it not only folds, but puts my laundry away. But I appreciate that there are people asking these questions and helping us think about what it means to truly transform an organization. Because the companies that can ask the questions are the ones that are winning in the transformation realm. The companies that cannot ask the questions, that don't have leaders willing to do that aren't willing to challenge the assumptions, are the ones that are going away. Just give you a quick example. Think of Toys R Us. It's been an institution for a very long time. They had a challenge. 80% of their revenue came in the fourth quarter of every year. They had mass amounts of capital infrastructure. They could never get on top of asking the questions of how fast the retail world would transform that they could adapt to. And ultimately, they filed bankruptcy, and they disappeared overnight. And we had a partnership with Toys R Us, and we were actually installed in the FAO Schwartz and the one in Times Square that used to exist there during the time period that they closed everything down and filed for bankruptcy. And you saw the lack of the ability for them to ask questions that truly could help transform businesses. And every business that I work with is faced with this same thing. So as we think about how you ask and get resources, I just wanted to pause on what actually blocks transformation. And I have 3 things that I see time and time again that block it. Their fear, their control, and their mindset. To be a truly great leader, to be someone who can drive innovation and transformation, you have to let other really great people help you solve those problems. Right? Because no innovation, no transformation, no leadership is ever driven by one person alone. It's driven by the ability to leverage the talents of people around you. I wanted to just pause on mindset. So about a month ago, I was at one of the major airlines with the CIO. And in my business, we do a lot around digital transformation and what the world can look like with what's becoming available. And every person, every SVP that I talked to, and even after our simulation, she paused for a second, and the entire mindset of every person I talked there was really interesting because every time you said, okay, are you ready? Like, imagine this should be the world you should go to. This is how you connect with consumers. This is what happens, the way you can handle your regular operations. And every person in that company would say, oh, we're working on this integration. It's taking 5 years. And that would be really great, but I just don't know how we can ever get there. Every person you ever talk to. And as I listened to that, every time I just wanted to stand up and say, but you have to imagine what the world will become. You have to ask the questions about how your customers engage and how you make a better experience in order for you to have better competitive advantage in your space. Because I promise you, every time you say, oh, it's so hard, it's a 5-year integration, you never move forward. You never create the space where you can truly capitalize on the entire market potential that stands in front of you. And so I think those blockers for transformation impede a lot of companies and in their ability to move forward and in leaders' ability to move forward. When you think about you as a leader and working with teams of people, because see, leadership isn't about a title, right? Leadership is truly about your ability to galvanize people around you for a specific cause or reason. It has nothing to do with the position you have in a company. And these block people also. We're blocked because we're fearful someone will take over, they might have a better idea than us, that our ideas are the very best and no one else can do it as well as we can, that our mindset is that control, all of those exist. And I promise you, they block your ability to grow. They block your ability to leverage the talents of great people around you and truly achieve what you want to do. One of the ways that I measure my success as a leader is, as I evaluate when I work with teams of people, I always ask, if I leave this team of people, or if I stop running this organization, or I move somewhere else, will the people around me still want to work with me? Would they ask to follow me? And would they be willing to work with me again? And I feel like I did a good job at not being a blocker for transformation and innovation if they say they will. If they say that I've done a good job of leveraging their talents, of integrating them into the team, of being transparent, of doing all of those things that allow you to access resources. And what I found is when you do that, it is the door that unlocks innovation capital. It is the powerful tool that allows you to do that because people are such a critical part of anyone's path and success. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how being able to ask the right questions unlocks this power of transformation. So if you agree with this, that innovative thinkers have the capacity to hold two diametrically opposing ideas in their heads, then it becomes really important that you be able to ask questions and handle all of the different answers that come to you at the exact same moment in time. Because asking questions is the thing that does this. It unlocks resources, it unlocks commitment, it unlocks revenue, and it unlocks impact. Anything that you are trying to unlock in an organization can be found when you have the ability to really ask those right questions. Of course, there's other parts of things you have to be able to do to experiment and problem solve, et cetera. But I wanted to focus on what it means to truly be able to ask the right questions and kind of three characteristics that I think are critical to what I called the art of the ask. So one of those, and actually, hold on, I'm going to just flip it back and then I'll play the video. There's 3 A's because I wanted alliteration. So we're going to go with being agile, which is the ability to move quickly and easily. I come out of software. We talk about agile all of the time, right? It's this ability to quickly and easily, we're doing sprint planning, we're agile software developers. But it means a little bit something different as I was thinking about this in the context of asking questions. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. How many of you have been to Disneyland and seen World of Color? Okay, I call the World of Color the Bellagio on steroids because it includes, the water fountains and et cetera. But what you see here, if you look closely, are these Mickey ears that glow with the show control system. So to set this up a little bit, at Disney, everything is about storytelling. It's how do you take you as a guest and put you in a storyline? So one of the challenges that we had is how do you engage guests in things like nighttime spectaculars? Because typically in a nighttime spectacular, you show up, you sit at the parade line, you sit in the audience of Fantasmic, but you're not really part of the narrative. So how do we make you a member of the story? So there was this idea that said, well, wonder if we put Mickey ear hats that glow with the show on every person who watches it and make them part of the storyline. And so Disney's fabulous at asking questions. They're also fabulous at creating innovative environments where any idea becomes possible and then you can build from them. So this idea came through a series of those activities. And it had been shown, and Cars Land was about 7 months from opening. So this was a couple of years ago. And there was this team and so anyway, we got the green light, and we only had 7 months. So the idea was, make these ears glow with the entire system, which meant you had to create the IR receivers, you had to create ear hats that had PCBs in them, you had to integrate with the show control system. You had an entire amount of work, and no one had started fabricating anything in China in order to get thousands of hats into the park. And there was a 6-month timeline. And this principle of Agile really applied to there. So not only was there a 6 months timeline, but there was not an organization that said, you're responsible to do all of that. There were 15 organizations that had to come together. And so when I think about how you ask for resources and what that requires, you have to have this ability to be super agile and adapt to that moment. In 6 months, I promise you it means that your normal manufacturing process in China was just thrown out the window. Because not only did you only have 6 months, but you also had the Chinese New Year, right? So that's going to create a whole other series of problems of getting things into hands. And we had all of the other, we had entertainment, you have parks that you have to worry about, and everything. And what we learned is that if you have this agile mindset, the ability to say whatever barrier stands in front of us, we're going to ask the questions, we're going to figure out what our options are, and we might make trade-offs, but we're going to make them in real time, and we're going to do it as quickly as possible. And it required and expected that every person on that team have this ability to be super agile in the moment. That if that PCB wasn't going to work, or that die wasn't available in the chipset, that we would find another way around it. And I believe that this idea of being truly agile, meaning you can easily change to different situations, is a critical component of being able to ask and then being able to do things inside of that environment. One other quick kind of storyline on the ability to be agile, this ability to move quickly and easily. About 11 years ago, we founded the Women Tech Council. So our job, so I come out of STEM, right? I was one of 3 women in my graduating computer science class. And we have, as you well know, far fewer women inside of technology. 23% of the workforce in technology companies are female. So I care a lot about how we increase the number of women into technology companies. And the driver for us is the economic impact of that. Well, because of my software background, when we started the Women Tech Council, we completely embraced agile management techniques. We don't believe we have all the right answers, but we do believe we have a really good team of people that can experiment with things, get the response back, and adjust. So over 11 years, we have a community now of about 10,000 people, and we are truly impacting the entire talent pipeline all the way from high school to the boardroom. But I believe one of the core things that has made our organization so successful is this ability to be agile, to understand what the needs of the community are, to take the talent that we have around the table and to very quickly adjust to the places where resources can be most adeptly used. And we do that time and time again. And that's because what's most fascinating about the Women Tech Council is our entire executive board are volunteers. We all have full-time day jobs. So we run that community with a staff of a couple of people who are full-time and the rest of everyone who's not. And the only reason that's possible is because of how we think about how you can easily adapt inside of that environment. So my next one that I want to tell you that I think is a critical skill in this ability to learn the art of the ask is your ability to become an activator and to be able to activate resources and people and talent and whatever else that you need, whether it's when you're fundraising, whether you're building a product, or whether you're closing a deal. And to activate, I mean those people that can make things happen by turning thoughts into action. I value the activator skill a lot. There are a lot of people with good ideas, but good ideas are only as good as those things that get executed and those things that go to market. And the other thing that I know is when you go to market, it's never perfect. And so activation for me, as you tie it to the ability to be agile, and then my final one, is really this ability to make things start to happen. A couple of quick examples. We started 3D Plus Me, and we had launched originally with the Marvel brand and Major League Baseball. And we launched at Comic-Con. And so we launched at Comic-Con with the Marvel product line, which is clearly a really great place to launch with the Marvel product line. And I had a conversation, and Walmart came up to me, and Walmart called me. And we had just barely launched, so we're like 2 weeks into product launch. We built a software system, lots of infrastructure. We were nowhere near kind of full-scale launch. And Walmart came to me and they said, hey, Sid, how many Walmarts can you deploy in by September? This is the end of June. And I was like, oh, that's a really good question. The first thought that came to my mind is, well, as many as you pay for. That was my first response, because that's typically my response. And then I paused and I said, oh, you know, I think I'll take as many Walmarts as I can get, but I have a couple of other complicating factors in the business. One is our price point was sitting around $80. We use 3D printing, so you could get yourself as a full 3D printed color statue of you as Iron Man. It does look very cool. But I knew that my $80 to $100 price point was a little expensive for Walmart. So I decided I needed a toy line. Okay, we're June. They want September for Superhero September, because that's when DC Comics and Marvel come together to help us purchase products before the Christmas holiday. That's like Superhero September. And so I want to be in Superhero September. And I needed a cheaper price point. Well, to do that, I need to make a toy. Guess who owns the global toy license for all Marvel and Star Wars products? Not me, it's Hasbro. So if I want to make a toy product, I have to become friends with Hasbro. So I sat down with my team, and this is our ability to kind of activate. And we said, you know what, we need a cheaper product. Oh, we don't know the right guys at Hasbro, but I bet we can find them. Let's go see if we can get them on the phone. Let's see if we can convince them that we need a toy product, and maybe they'll launch with us in 60 days. So we made the phone call. We get connected to the team. 3 weeks later, they commit to launch with us for Superhero September. So now we have Marvel, Walmart, and Hasbro, and we launched in September for Superhero September across the country in about 20 Walmarts, because we couldn't do more than that. There was no way. But in this 60-day window, and it was because we had this ability to activate, which came fundamentally down to our ability to ask really good questions we could take action on. Do you think we had to cut a bunch of corners that wouldn't have been ideal? You bet. Otherwise, there's no way you hit a 60-day window. We had to invent a new product, which meant everything from Hasbro figuring out which product that we could do, how we could personalize it, get through their QA process, get through our own QA process, through development, into deployment, and into installations in those places. But we hit the 60-day window. And it's only because the entire mindset of the people around in our team was, we're going to activate. And we're going to make that happen. And we are going to be really good at turning those thoughts into actions as fast as possible, whenever that's true. And our team became really good at this. I think it becomes a defining culture when you have those leadership styles that kind of permeate. So about a year and a half later, we had partnered with Walmart, and by this time Hasbro had created a toy line. They actually produced one for us. And they had decided that we should partner with Target. So we sat down, and I sat down with the team, and we had worked with Target, and we decided we were going to roll into Targets. And to do this rollout into Targets required a really big partner of ours to deliver a really big component. So it took us 6 months and 40 buyouts to get the Target deal signed, and I had just signed the contract. And a week later, we're like 3 weeks from install inside of the Target stores, and a week later, my biggest partner came to me, and they said, Sid, we can't hit the deadline. This was a Friday night at 5 o'clock. Sid, we can't hit the deadline. We're going to pull out, and we won't help you launch. And our launch was in 2 weeks. And so that was, I sat back, and I'm like, well, this will be a good weekend, and we'll come back on Monday. And when I came in on Monday, because the mindset of the entire team was this ability to activate and ask really good questions, I turned to the group, and I said, I think I'm going to ask you to do the impossible, and I have no idea if it's going to even be possible, but can we brainstorm every possible way we might solve this problem in order to hit that launch date in 2 weeks? And I asked them just to play the game. And sometimes I find that that's one of the very best things you can do, is just ask people to play the game for some amount of time and figure out where it goes. So we sat down, and we came up with a whiteboard of all sorts of outlandish and crazy ideas that may or may not work. And we said, everyone's just going to go activate everyone in their community, including our weak ties and our strong ties, which included family members, and every person in that entire list. And we started making phone calls. And we got some no's and we got some yeses. And we missed our launch day by 2 days. And we filled every gap that we had standing in front of us, and it was significant. It also meant like 150 of our family members showed up to help us configure things and get them on the truck in order to get the installations there. But that ability to activate meant we didn't think about the boundaries around us. We didn't think about the constraints that we were faced with. We didn't think about the reasons that we could fail. It would have been much easier to do that. It would have been much easier to say, they pulled out, we can't solve, we're not going forward. But that's not the game we were playing. And I don't think that's what people who are activators do. I think that they look at the problem and they recognize that there are obstacles in the path, and then they go forward and they find a way to make those things happen. And it's a very critical skill that we all have to learn, because we live in a really agile environment. It's said today that by the time you're 40, you will have had 7 different careers. The average person stays at their job less than 3 years today. That means for the majority of us, we don't stay at one company. Our lives don't look like that anymore. They look very different, which means we'll be in very different environments. And it's really going to be about the skills that you develop that create your success in any of those environments, far less than the knowledge we have, because we will literally, I'm not just talking about going from product management job to product management job, or management consulting job to management consulting job, but fundamental career changes. And what that means is that it is the skills that we're talking about today that become the most critical factor in determining your success as you work with people and as you build networks. Now, the third one that I wanted to introduce to you is this ability of being adaptable. So this is a very hard one for a lot of people, to live in a world where you are adapting to real-time circumstances. So how many of you have ever swam in a bioluminescent bay? All right, it's a really cool experience. We had an opportunity to do it this summer in the Caymans. And it reminded me of being adaptable, right? Because the moment that you jump in there, all of the particles adapt to you, right? They light up in whatever motion that you make in this real-time movement, right? So if you want to make a snow angel in the water, you do that. When the boat goes, they're all lighting up like they look like LED lights. They adapt in real time to whatever the environment is that interrupts them. And they adjust to those new conditions in a moment. So my question for us is, how do we adjust to those real-time changes that are happening and are creating new conditions, and how are we adaptable? And we learned this in Lean Startup, we learned this in Agile Development, but the ability to be truly adaptable, that is one of those things that is also critical to your success. I believe the number one skill that I hire for is what Jeff talked about. It's actually creative problem solving. I hire for that more than anything else. Because I believe if you can creatively problem solve, you can adapt and adjust to any new condition I will throw at you. Because in the life of a startup, which I've spent a number of years in, every day is a crisis. There is some problem every day that you're solving. And in light of that, that means that you have to be really adaptable. You have to be really adept at understanding these changing conditions and changing product scope or delivery scope or the conversation with the customer, whatever those moments are at any given time. And this plays itself out in all sorts of circumstances. I've watched as people fundraise. So I was thinking of venture capital. So I've raised a bunch of venture capital in my career for the companies that I've started. And I have a lot of friends who go out and try to raise capital. So a couple of interesting things for you to think about just from my perspective. So last year, of all the venture capital that got deployed to companies, only 2% went to female founders. Okay? So that just means my odds are a lot worse than your odds when I go to fundraise. And that's okay. That's just the way. So I remember when I went to fundraise for 3D Plus Me, one of my mentors in the venture capital world, he said to me, Sid, just remember, you're probably going to go do 100 meetings before you get 2 or 3 people to invest in you. Okay, that's a math problem. I'm good at math. I get it. That's how many I'm going to have to do. But what you don't realize is how many rejections what that actually means. Because what that really means is people are telling you you don't match their investment thesis, or you should have made this decision differently, or maybe your business model should be slightly adjusted, or they don't invest in a company that intersects consumer. Whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. You are getting told that you won't get that fundraising at that time. So you figure out how to become really adaptable in those situations. And what I've really loved, so I have a friend, she's currently fundraising for her company. And I've watched this adaptability skill in her kind of lead out. So she wasn't going to get the funding in the traditional fundraising mechanisms that you all think of, going just to the ventures or the angels and then going into the venture community. And so she's pivoted a number of times and figured out how to just go to solve the problem. I need money. I've got a problem people are solving. People are paying for it. And I'm going to go pursue every possible avenue in order to get that deal done. And this ability to be adaptable, to change to new circumstances, I believe is more in demand today than ever before, because the world is ever changing. Every company that I work with, and I have the opportunity right now to work with some really large companies, this adaptability, the people who can't adapt are getting pushed out of the organizations. The people who don't understand how when new conditions change, that it doesn't look like, we don't solve the problem the same way we solved in 5 years, they won't survive. Because the landscape is changing way too fast. And so when you think about how that intersects with your ability to ask really good questions, this art of the ask, which is where I really think it's about being agile, being able to be an activator, and being able to be adaptable, the intersection of those three are the skills that really take us to the next level and create opportunities that we can't imagine. And then it comes down to our ability to ask really great questions and be okay with whatever the answer is, and then react to that information as just a new set of information in order to get the outcome that we're going for. And when you have this ability to do this, that's where I see all of the new leaders emerging. People who are stuck in the old ways, who can't really understand how to adapt or how to be agile, they're no longer leading those companies. Every company I work with is pulling in what's called the chief digital officer, right? And that digital officer is becoming the head of transformation. And transformation requires you to have things like the innovation capital and all of those skills that are in there. And it requires you to think of leadership in a different way. One of the things that I learned at Disney, so Disney was 130,000 people. I didn't have 130,000 direct reports. I sat in the Imagineering group that was doing technology commercialization. I had almost no direct reports. But we figured out how to run teams of hundreds of and thousands of people to get projects done and deployed. And I really believe, as I look back on it, that is the core of some of these skills that came forward. And that to become a true innovative leader, it shouldn't matter your position. It really should just really should be about your skill set. That's how all the best leaders are found inside of organizations. And at the end of the day, what I really think that means is that it comes down to being able to ask good questions, because when you ask great questions and you're willing to get the answers, then everything becomes possible that you're trying to achieve. And you can really take on whatever that you want, anything that you want to do in whatever aspect of your life you're trying to pursue. So thank you.